Good evening, I'm Maciej Mikos and you're watching World News Tonight, live from Warsaw. European nations have sent troops to Greenland in response to Donald Trump's push to take the island. We'll have more on that in just a moment. But first, let's take a look at tonight's headlines.
We've been told that the killing in Iran is stopping, and it's stopped.
Iranian airspace reopens as Donald Trump wavers on responding to the deadly crackdown on civilian protesters.
If there is no power, there is nothing. No light, no heating, no hot water, nothing.
Kyiv residents struggle to stay warm after Russia hits thermal power plant.
All crew members are currently undergoing the routine post-splashdown medical evaluation. The crew member of concern is doing fine.
International Space Station crew back on Earth after a medical emergency in space. The US taking over Greenland would be the end of the world as we know it, says Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk. Warsaw will not be sending its soldiers, while several European countries are deploying their troops to the disputed island amid tensions with Washington. John Todd has this report.
Danish troops disembarking Greenland. They're being deployed to boost security on the Arctic island. They'll be joined by brothers in arms from Finland, Sweden, Norway, Germany and France, who have rallied in the face of threats by US President Donald Trump to take control of the Danish territory by force. France's foreign minister says NATO's European allies
are completely capable of defending their territory against any threat, wherever it may come from.
Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk says Poland will not be sending soldiers to Greenland. He was explicit about the consequences of American military action over the Danish territory.
A conflict or an attempt to take over the territory of a country that is a NATO member by another NATO member, and what's more, if it's the United States, that would be the end of the world as we know it.
And what's emerging as a crisis for Europe, a forced US takeover of Greenland, is not backed in the States. A Reuters poll found only 4% of Americans said it would be a good idea to use military might. US Senator Mitch McConnell warned that military action would incinerate the trust of allies.
And until the president can demonstrate otherwise, then the proposition at hand today is pretty straightforward. Incinerating the hard-won trust of loyal allies in exchange for no meaningful change.
Analysts agree there's no benefit to America acquiring control of Greenland.
You have the Danish, the Greenlandic, the European side, and I suspect many people in the US system who understand perfectly well that there's no geostrategic, military or economic reason for this. And then you have President Trump on the other side.
After a crunch White House summit on Wednesday between the Danish and Greenlandic foreign ministers, US Secretary of State Marco Rubio and Vice President J.D. Vance, Donald Trump repeated his demands over Greenland on the grounds of national security, but this time appeared to soften his position, possibly suggesting a deal could be done.
I have a very good relationship with Denmark, and we'll see how it all works out. I think something will work out. Yep.
Copenhagen and Washington have now agreed to form a working group to discuss concerns about the island. John Todd for TVP World.
The situation in Iran seems to have stabilized as the government decided to halt executions of detained protesters. This apparently led to a partial de-escalation of tensions with the US. Has President Trump abandoned his plans to strike the Ayatollah's regime? Kazimierz Łysiak reports.
Massive protests in Iran over repressions and a failing economy are reportedly wavering in some parts of the country following brutal crackdowns from the regime. But according to messages coming through the information blockade, it's not over yet.
My family said people are still on the street, and some others said not really. I think it depends on the city and district.
The regime imposed a nationwide internet shutdown in Iran shortly after the protests erupted. Messages and videos of demonstrations are mostly coming out thanks to Starlink satellites. Other communication is strictly controlled by the regime of Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei.
Islamic Republic is releasing the news that they want to be released. So recently the number of videos of killing, of people being killed is way more than the number of videos of the protester.
The exact number of people killed in the demonstrations is difficult to pinpoint due to the information blackout. Various media and independent human rights organizations are citing between 2,000 to 12,000 deaths. And yet one person believes the killing has stopped: US President Donald Trump.
We've been told that the killing in Iran is stopping, and it's stopped, and it's stopping. And there's no plan for executions or executions. So I've been told that a good authority. We'll find out about it. I'm sure if it happens, we'll all be very upset.
It now seems like the US leader is backing down from his threat to launch military strikes against the Iranian regime.
He leaves open the door for dialogue. The Iranian Foreign Ministry, Arakshi, has confirmed that he wants to keep the channel open.
Now, while it doesn't mean that Trump won't authorize military action at some point, as he had already struck Iran's nuclear facilities last year, he is clearly changing his tone.
I don't see any indication from the Trump administration or from rather President Trump himself, that he's actually interested in a, let's call it, deep regime change in Iran, right? We have seen this play out in Venezuela.
The Iranian regime has now opened its airspace after closing it for several hours on Wednesday. At the same time, several states, including Poland and Italy, have advised their citizens to immediately leave Iran due to the unstable situation. For TVP World, Kazimierz Łysiak.
Millions of Ukrainians have been left without power, heating and running water after a series of Russian strikes on the country's civilian infrastructure. This as temperatures have plummeted to the lowest in the past 10 years. Oskar Terzi reports from Kiev.
The Russian attacks have left as much as 70% of Kiev's population without power and, in many cases, also without heating and running water. As Ukraine is experiencing its coldest winter in 10 years, with temperatures regularly as low as minus 15 degrees Celsius, Kiev's residents are struggling to cope with the conditions. Last week, Kiev's mayor, Vitaly Klitschko, even went as far as controversially recommending that people temporarily leave the capital while repair workers tried to restore power to the embattled city.
I am addressing the residents of the capital. If you have the opportunity to temporarily leave the city for areas where there are alternative sources of power and heating, please do so.
Since that message, Russia has continued to target Ukraine's electricity infrastructure. The situation has got so bad that some Kiev residents are taking the mayor's advice and temporarily leaving the city.
My apartment is completely dependent on electricity. If there is no power, there is nothing. No light, no heating, no hot water, nothing. So it was very cold, and due to the extreme weather, due to, of course, firstly, Russian strikes and combination with extreme weather, it's just impossible to live there. And I made this hard decision for me to move first in the hotel, and then I decided to move to Lviv.
The local authorities have responded by setting up heated tents around the city, dubbed resilience centres, to provide temporary shelter for those struggling to heat their homes. But as temperatures are expected to stay well below freezing for at least the rest of the month, many more residents, like Diana, are considering temporary evacuation from Kyiv as the humanitarian situation across the country continues to deteriorate. I'm Oskar Terzi, reporting from Kyiv for TVP World.
Poland thwarted December's attempts to disrupt its energy infrastructure, Prime Minister Donald Tusk said on Thursday, noting that up to 500,000 people could have lost heat had the attack succeeded. Ovidiusz Niczeja has the story.
The Polish Prime Minister has met with energy officials and security agencies. The topic of this meeting was Poland's energy security and recent cyber attacks on Poland's energy infrastructure. A recent cyber attack, which took place in December 2025, could have left up to 500,000 people without heating, according to the Prime Minister, as it targeted two combined heat and power plants and wind farms. The Polish Prime Minister says that Russia is responsible for planning and carrying out this cyber attack.
Polska obroniła się przed próbami destabilizacji.
Poland successfully defended itself against others' attempts at destabilizing our energy infrastructure. The critical infrastructure was never threatened, not for a moment, meaning the transmission network, which determines the entire system's security, worked. There are many reasons to believe that these attacks were prepared by groups directly linked to Russian services. I don't want to speculate because, as you know, it is difficult to get hard proof, but I don't think we have any doubts about the source of inspiration.
Ale raczej nie mamy wątpliwości co do źródeł inspiracji.
The Polish parliament is working on a new cybersecurity legislation, which is meant to give institutions stronger tools to protect the energy infrastructure and prevent foreign interference. The Polish Prime Minister has urged the parliament to adopt this bill as quickly as possible and also has urged the Polish president to sign the bill as quickly as possible. From Warsaw for TVP World, Ovidiusz Nicieja.
Czech Prime Minister Andrej Babiš is facing a vote of confidence. Well, the vote is expected to go in his favour. International confidence in the Czech government has already been restored after Prague announced it will maintain the ammunition for Ukraine drive. Our correspondent Andrew Sweeney has more.
The new Czech government faces its first vote of confidence, a routine procedure, but it's foreign affairs where restored confidence is most evident. When Andrej Babiš became the Czech Prime Minister again in 2025, he promised to stop state aid for Ukraine.
We will not give a single koruna from the state budget to Ukraine for weapons. We have no money for the Czech Republic.
But at least one aspect of support will remain, the Czech Ammunition Initiative, which supplied Kiev with 1.8 million rounds of ammo last year. In his second visit abroad as a new Czech Foreign Minister, Petr Mašinka visited Kiev on January 9th and confirmed that the initiative would stay in place.
It is important for us to talk to the Ukrainian side and establish contacts as quickly as possible as the new government, because we are fully aware of the situation on the Ukrainian battlefield. The Czech Ammunition Initiative has proven its effectiveness in protecting the lives of our people and the security of all of Europe. Thank you for continuing it.
However, it won't be state-funded. The Czech government will only act as a coordinator for the scheme, which supplied 43% of the ammo sent to Kiev from Europe in 2025. Still, the fact that the initiative will remain in place has been met with sighs of relief from former Czech government officials as well as from Ukraine.
It was a relief for the former government and the current opposition that the current government decided that the Czech Ammunition Initiative will continue.
However, he also warns that the government is still under pressure to stop all state support for Kyiv.
There's a part of Czech society which don't want to hear much about Ukraine, and the new government is trying to feed for their feelings.
As for the vote of confidence, Babiš's governing coalition has a clear majority in parliament, and some opposition MPs have been absent from proceedings. It's widely expected that his government will pass this first hurdle. For TVP World, Andrew Sweeney.
The SpaceX Crew 11 mission to the International Space Station has come to an end. It will go down in history as the first space mission cut short due to medical issues. Zuzanna Jurek reports.
Endeavour begins its journey home with the Crew 11 crew.
What you see here is a first in the history of space travel as a mission to the International Space Station was cut short due to a medical emergency.
There we can see visual confirmation of...
On Thursday, the SpaceX Dragon capsule filled with Crew 11 members touched down in the Pacific Ocean following a 10-hour journey.
Astronaut Mike Fink.
NASA astronauts Zena Cardman, Mike Fink, JAXA astronaut Kimye Yui, and Roscosmos cosmonaut Oleg Platonov are all safe and in good spirits. All crew members are currently undergoing the routine post-splashdown medical evaluation. The crew member of concern is doing fine.
The Crew 11 members arrived at the ISS in early August and were scheduled to stay until mid-February.
While this was the first time we had to return crew slightly ahead of schedule, NASA was ready. The team responded quickly and professionally, as did the teams across the agency, working closely with our commercial partners, and executed a very safe return. This is exactly why we train, and this is NASA at its finest.
The decision to evacuate the crew was made at the beginning of the month.
The medical incident was sufficient enough that we were concerned about the astronaut, that we would like to complete that workup. And the best way to complete that workup is on the ground, where we have the full suite of medical testing hardware.
Following their departure, the International Space Station is manned by 3 astronauts. Crew 12 is expected to launch into the orbit in mid-February. For TVP World, Zuzanna Jurek.
AI-generated images are fueling a new wave of online marketplace scams, hitting sellers on platforms like Vinted. Fraudsters are using fake damage photos to claim refunds for problems that never existed. Aisha Bache reports on the latest internet phenomenon.
You're a seller on Vinted and you use AI to make your items appear more professional, more attractive to your potential buyers.
I'll simply take a photo with my smartphone and ask him to edit the image so that this shirt looks perfect.
But once you send your item in perfectly acceptable condition out for delivery, you receive a message saying the item arrived damaged, and there's an attached photo of alleged damage. Well, this may not always be true.
Stop scrolling! Scammers are now faking rips and stains on your Vinted clothes using AI. They edit photos to make the item look destroyed, then claim a refund and keep the item. Take photos and videos before shipping, keep chats in the app and report dodgy buyers. Stay sharp and share this so no one else gets scammed.
Vinted is currently one of the most popular online selling platforms in Poland, and fraudsters are using fake photos and videos to get their money back from e-commerce sites.
Here you can clearly see that there are wrinkles, small flaws, so that's believable. But on the other hand, it's really what's around the item, the skin, the hair, everything is too perfect.
One user described a surprising situation she encountered after sending in a sold item. It turns out the buyer used AI to extort money.
I received a message saying there's a dispute because the boot was damaged down its middle. I'm sorry, but the photo looked suspicious to me, so I asked the buyer for more pictures. I asked her to return the boots and requested a return label. After I sent the label, she wrote that her mother had thrown the boots away.
Online shopping platforms have long depended on photos submitted by customers to confirm that refund requests are legitimate, but generative AI is now starting to break the system. Forter, a New York-based fraud detection company, estimates that AI-doctored images used in refund claims have increased by more than 15% since 2025 and continues to rise globally. Experts say that organized crime groups are using the same tactics to orchestrate refund fraud, just at a higher scale. In one Forter-documented case, scammers submitted over $1 million worth of refund claims using AI-altered images. The requests were submitted in a tight time window, seemingly to overwhelm the system. So, next time you sell an item from an online shopping platform, watch out for AI damage scams and document your products. For TVP World, I'm Aisha Bache.
A rather unexpected standoff took place in Olsztyn, Poland on Wednesday. A herd of wild boars barged on to the tram tracks and refused to move, effectively paralyzing 2 lines for nearly half an hour. The herd, lightly huddled together in the middle of the track, was quite determined not to budge. The boars were eventually persuaded to move, and service resumed shortly after. No one was hurt in the incident, but local authorities have warned residents not to interact with any boars found wandering around the city. Danish-American negotiations brought no breakthrough on Greenland as the crisis deepens. Several European countries are sending their forces to the Arctic island. And To talk about it, we're joined by Lieutenant General Arto Ratti, former Permanent Secretary at the Finnish Ministry of Defence. Good evening.
Good evening.
Now, General, apart from the UK, France and Germany, also Norway and Sweden are sending their troops to Greenland. Finland reportedly decided to join the initiative and deploy 2 soldiers there. Now, will Helsinki send more soldiers to Greenland?
And that is something that has to be decided after these 2 officers have studied the situation in Greenland and look at the circumstances and the needs of Denmark. And the decisions are made after that study has been done.
I see, but what can literally 2 soldiers change? Well, Donald Trump has his doubts about the security of the island, right? Now, Europeans decide to send like 13 to 1 soldier. Is this supposed to convince Donald Trump that Europeans are actually doing something to ease his concerns?
No, I think that's a try from European side to show that yes, we will take care of the Arctic region, but we have to take into regard that we are talking about over 2 million square meters territory in Greenland. So defending Greenland is a huge challenge for any country, even the US. And it's very important that the European countries now show that they are willing to put some forces, the boots on the ground in Greenland and start exercising there and having a look what can be done in strengthening the defense of Greenland. As we all know that the threats from US side have been very serious and have to be taken seriously, stating that a NATO country, the most important NATO country, is saying that they are willing or ready to use military force to occupy an area of their ally. That's a major question. I think the only way for Europe is to show that, yes, Europe is going to take its own initiative, put some forces down on the island, and also show that we are ready to defend it if need comes.
I see. Now, in your professional opinion...
So the numbers are... Sorry, so the numbers are not what matters at the moment. Actually, the actions are, that nations are taking actions, is the most important thing at the moment.
I see. Now, General, in your professional opinion, is the NATO's northern flank vulnerable to Russian or Chinese attacks?
Northern flank, it's a wide, large area. If you say we are part of the northern flank ourselves, and we have 1,300 kilometers border with Russia. So yes, it's a vulnerable area, of course, but actions are taken in order to strengthen our defense and have to take into regard, for example, Finland, which has been building its national capabilities since the since the Second World War. So we are ready in our area, but there are countries which are not that ready yet. Greenland is a different case. It's a huge area with, as I said, over 2 million square kilometers of very tough terrain. So I don't believe that taking over of Greenland by US is the way to secure US security. It can be also done by agreements and cooperation with Denmark and Greenland.
I see. Now, talking about the causes of the current crisis, is Denmark opposing the deployment of more US critical defense infrastructure on the island? Because Donald Trump claims that Greenland is crucial for the Golden Dome air defense project.
Yes, it can be crucial, but I don't know the talks between Denmark and US, what's going on at the moment. I only see the news from the public sources. So, but I personally believe that the demand from US side can be satisfied also by agreements. Mm-hmm. It doesn't need to be owned by US. It doesn't need to be taken over by US. It can also be an agreement between allies. And I think, as we all know, that we know that the history of NATO is a long one. Denmark has been very loyal ally for US in missions, lost a lot of manpower also in missions, especially in Afghanistan. So it would be really catastrophic movement towards NATO if the US takes military actions against the NATO country.
So could there be
So I hope that I hope that the solution is some kind of cooperation agreement where US can deploy those capabilities it needs to have on Greenland together with Denmark.
So if not the sheer ownership of Greenland, can both countries reach some sort of a consensus, a compromise on the legal status of the island?
The legal status at the moment, as we all know, is it's part of Denmark. It has its own autonomy, but that's part of Denmark, and I don't see that there's a need to change that status. But of course, this is an issue between US and Denmark, which is very difficult for me to say what are the steps to be taken. But I strongly believe that there are other solutions than using force.
It seems that Russia is trying to exploit the whole turmoil around Greenland for its own benefit. Former Russian President Medvedev has, he has urged Donald Trump on social media to take over the island. Now, is Moscow trying one more time to drive a wedge between NATO allies, and is it working?
I must say Russia must be looking happily what is happening between Europe and US at the moment, because what is happening now and taking the actions today actually are playing the cards into the hands of Russia. This is exactly what Russia wants. It wants NATO to be dismantled or NATO to be paralyzed. And one way to do it is to take actions between the allied nations. And this is something we don't want to see.
Now, do you agree with the Danish Prime Minister's warning that an American military intervention in Greenland would mean, well, basically the end of NATO? Not the end of NATO as we know it, but the end of NATO totally.
We all know that the US is the most important NATO member and has the biggest capabilities in their hands. So, of course, if this makes a fraction inside NATO, in a way taking US out of the structures, of course, it's the end of the NATO we know today. Hopefully, this will never happen, because I think US also needs its partners in Europe. It's a win-win case to be together.
So maybe it's just, much ado about nothing. Maybe Donald Trump's administration is not really considering a military option against Greenland, and it's only using it as a sort of a leverage in negotiations with the Danish.
Yeah, this has been the tactic from US side recently, having strong statements and then taking backwards and taking a step forward. So you never know what is the actual plan behind. Unfortunately, discussions which was just held between Denmark and US didn't show that much green light in the cooperation. The only thing that was positive was that they agreed on some kind of working group. But at the end of the discussion, what I have understood, the outcome was that opinions differ as they differed before the meeting. So it's very interesting to see what happens next week when we have the World Economic Forum meeting starting, and Trump is going to participate in Davos too. So it will be interesting to see what kind of statements we hear from Davos.
And if you were to predict what will be the final outcome of these consultations, negotiations basically, between Denmark and the US?
My crystal ball was cracked down a long time ago already, so I don't have the crystal ball in my hands anymore, unfortunately. So I don't want to do any kind of prediction at the moment, because statements are going left and right, up and down, and so it's difficult to follow the path and to have some kind of picture in your mind what may happen next. I personally, as I said, I wish that there will be some kind of agreement between Denmark and US agreed, which then satisfies US security guarantees and also guarantees the territory of Denmark to be untouched. And those things are needed now. I don't know what is the motivation behind U.S. Statements, because when we're talking about 51st first state of the U.S., it sounds like a personal campaign, not like a strategic, carefully planned action by a superpower.
Lieutenant General Arto Räty, former permanent secretary at the Finnish Ministry of Defence, was our guest this evening. Thank you very much, General.
Thank you.
And thank you for watching, and stay with us for more interviews here on TVP World.